Story 1. The room across the hall. I used to travel a lot for work. Not constantly, but enough that hotels had become completely normal to me. I knew how to check in, how to find my room, how to get ice from the machine at 2 in the morning without feeling like I was doing something unusual. And honestly, I never thought much about hotel security. You lock your door. You put the little metal latch across it. You go to sleep. That's supposed to be enough. This happened about 6 years ago when I had to spend 3 nights in a hotel for work. It was one of those mid-range business hotels located just off a major highway. Nothing fancy. There was a lobby with a small coffee station, a front desk that was staffed 24 hours a day, and 3 floors of rooms. I arrived around 9:30 at night. It had been raining most of the evening, and by the time I got there, I was exhausted. The parking lot was mostly empty. I remember walking through the lobby with my suitcase, hearing the wheels make that loud plastic sound against the tile. The front desk clerk checked me in. She handed me my key card. "3rd floor," she said, "room 318. I thanked her and took the elevator. When I reached the 3rd floor, I noticed something immediately. The hallway was almost completely empty. There was one room directly across from mine. 318 was on one side. 319 was directly opposite. The door to 319 was closed. Nothing unusual. I went into my room, dropped my suitcase on the luggage rack, and immediately ordered food. For the next hour, everything was completely normal. I ate. I answered a few emails. I took a shower. Then I watched television for a while. Around midnight, I went to bed. That's when I heard the first noise. A soft knock. I opened my eyes. For a second, I didn't know where I was. Then I remembered. The hotel. I checked the clock. 12:17 a.m. Another knock came. This time I was sure it was coming from my door. I sat up. "Hello?" Nothing. I waited. A few seconds passed. Then I heard footsteps moving away. I got out of bed and walked toward the door. I didn't open it. Instead, I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty. I could see the door across from me, still closed. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds before deciding it was probably nothing. Maybe someone had knocked on the wrong door. It happens. I went back to bed. A few minutes later, I heard something again. This time, it sounded like the handle of my door moving, very slightly. I froze. I stared at the door. The handle moved down just a little. Then it stopped. I didn't breathe. I waited. Nothing. After maybe 30 seconds, I finally got up and checked the deadbolt. Locked. The metal security latch was also engaged. I told myself someone had simply tried the wrong room. That was the only explanation that made sense. So I went back to sleep. The next morning, I almost forgot about it. I went downstairs, grabbed breakfast, and left for work. When I came back around 6 p.m., I noticed something strange. The door to room 319 was open. Not completely, just a few inches. I walked past it. As I reached my own room, I glanced back. The door was still open. I thought about knocking, but then I decided against it. Maybe housekeeping had left it open. Maybe someone was checking the room. Maybe it was empty. I went inside mine. That night, I ordered room service. I was sitting at the desk when I heard footsteps outside. They stopped directly in front of my door. I looked up. Nothing happened. No knock, no movement, just silence. Then I heard something that made me uncomfortable. A faint, scratching sound, like someone's fingernail brushing against the surface of the door. I stood up. The sound stopped. I walked toward the door. I didn't touch it. I looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty again. But this time, I noticed something. The door to room 319 was closed. I went back to the desk. A few minutes later, I heard the footsteps again. They stopped outside my room. Then the handle moved. Once. Twice. I stepped backward. My heart was beating hard now. I picked up my phone. I considered calling the front desk, but before I could, I heard a voice. Very quietly. A man's voice. Wrong room. Then the footsteps moved away. I stood completely still. I called the front desk. The woman who answered sounded calm. I explained what had happened. She asked me if I was sure someone had tried my door. I said yes. She told me she'd send security upstairs. About 5 minutes later, I heard someone walking down the hallway. Then a knock. Hotel security. I checked through the peephole. A man in a dark uniform was standing there. I opened the door only after confirming his identity. He asked me what happened. I explained everything. He looked toward room 319. The door was closed. He walked over and knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Still nothing. Then he tried the handle. Locked. He called the front desk. A few minutes later, the night manager arrived. They opened room 319 with a master key. I stayed in my doorway. I remember watching the door slowly open. The room was dark. The manager turned on the lights. Nothing. Empty. No luggage. No clothes. No signs that anyone was staying there. The room was completely vacant. The manager looked confused. He told me the room hadn't been rented that night, or the night before, or apparently for several days. I asked him if someone could have been hiding inside. He said the room had been checked earlier that afternoon, but he couldn't say for certain. They searched the room. Nothing. The manager apologized and offered to move me to another floor. I agreed. I packed my things and moved to the second floor. The next morning I left the hotel. I assumed that was the end of it, but about a week later, I received a call from the hotel manager. He asked if I remembered the incident. I said yes. Then he told me something I still think about. The security cameras showed a man entering the third floor hallway around midnight. He wasn't a guest. He hadn't used a key card to enter the hallway. He had apparently followed another guest through the security door. The camera showed him walking directly to room 319. But here's the strange part. He never entered the room. Instead, he stood outside it for several minutes. Then he walked across the hallway to my door. He stood there for almost 2 minutes. The manager told me the man appeared to be looking at my room number. Then he tried the handle. I asked what happened after that. The manager said the man walked away. He disappeared down the stairwell. They never found him. The hotel changed the locks on several doors and increased security afterward. I never found out who he was or what he wanted. But there is one detail I think about more than anything else. The night I first heard the knock, I almost opened the door. I was tired. I assumed it was a mistake. If I had opened it, I don't know what would have happened. And sometimes when I stay in hotels now, I still look at the door across the hallway because I know that an empty hotel room isn't necessarily empty. And sometimes the person you're worried about isn't trying to get into your room. Sometimes they're just standing outside it, waiting for you to open the door. A story 2. The child who wouldn't look at the door. This happened to my sister and her 8-year-old daughter. I'll call my niece Emma. They were traveling across the country for a family event and stopped at a hotel for one night. It was a completely ordinary place, 2 floors. indoor pool, free breakfast, the kind of hotel where families stay during road trips. My sister had booked a room with 2 beds. She arrived around 5 p.m. Emma was excited because the hotel had a swimming pool. They checked in, went upstairs, dropped their bags off, then spent about an hour at the pool. Nothing unusual happened. Afterward, they went to a nearby restaurant for dinner. They returned to the hotel around 9 p.m. Emma took a shower. My sister watched television. Everything was normal. Until Emma said something strange. "Mom." "Yeah?" "Why does that man keep standing outside our door?" My sister looked up. "What man?" Emma pointed toward the hallway. My sister walked over. She looked through the peephole. Nobody was there. "There's nobody there," Emma frowned. "Yes, there is." My sister opened the door. The hallway was empty. She looked both directions. Nothing. She closed the door. "Maybe he went into his room." Emma didn't answer. My sister assumed Emma had seen another guest earlier and was confused. Kids notice things. Sometimes they remember them differently. That was what my sister thought. About 20 minutes later, Emma asked again, "Mom?" "What? Is that man still there?" My sister's stomach dropped slightly. "Emma, there's no one there." Emma stared at the door. Then she said something that made my sister uncomfortable. "He's not standing there anymore." "Okay. He's hiding." My sister stopped. "What do you mean?" Emma pointed toward the bathroom. "He went in there." My sister looked at the bathroom. The door was closed. She walked over, opened it. Nothing, just a bathroom. My sister laughed nervously. "See, nobody's here." Emma didn't laugh. She just climbed into bed. A few minutes later, my sister heard a noise, a soft click. She looked toward the door. The security latch had moved slightly. My sister froze. She walked over. The door was still locked. The deadbolt was engaged. She checked the hallway through the peephole. Empty. She didn't know what to think. Maybe the latch had shifted. Maybe she had imagined it. She went back to bed. Around 11:30, they were both asleep. Then Emma woke her. "Mom." My sister opened her eyes. "What?" "Don't talk." My sister immediately sat up. Emma was staring toward the door. "Why?" Emma whispered. "He's back." My sister's heart started pounding. She slowly looked toward the door. Nothing. Then she heard it. 3 soft knocks. Knock, knock, knock. My sister didn't move. Emma grabbed her arm. The room went silent. Then another knock. This time harder. My sister picked up her phone. She called the front desk. The person answered. My sister whispered that someone was knocking on their door. The employee said they'd send someone upstairs. A few seconds later, my sister heard footsteps in the hallway. She looked through the peephole. A hotel employee was walking toward their room. My sister unlocked the door. The employee asked what happened. She explained. The employee looked confused. He said nobody else was supposed to be on their side of the hallway. He checked the hallway. Nothing. Then he noticed something. The door to the room next to theirs was slightly open. He walked over, knocked. No answer. He pushed the door open. The room was empty, but there was something strange. The room's curtains were open and the window was unlocked. My sister asked if that was normal. The employee said no. The window could only be opened a few inches, but someone could potentially climb through from the roof structure outside. He immediately called the manager. They checked the room. Nothing. Eventually, the employee told my sister they would move them to another room. My sister packed their things. Emma refused to walk past the door. She kept looking behind them. They moved to the opposite side of the hotel. My sister thought the situation was over. But the next morning, she received a call from the manager. He asked her to come downstairs. The police were there. Apparently, during the night, a man had been found hiding in a maintenance area near the second floor. He wasn't a hotel employee. He had apparently entered the hotel through an unsecured exterior door. The police found him because another guest had reported hearing someone moving around near the stairwell. But the most disturbing part came afterward. The hotel checked the security footage. The man had been inside the building for hours, and at one point, he had been standing directly outside my sister's room. The camera showed him standing there, just standing, for almost 4 minutes. Then he walked away. Later, he returned, and this time, he tried the door handle. My sister asked if he had entered their room. The manager said no. The deadbolt had prevented it. But then my sister remembered something. Emma's first comment. Why does that man keep standing outside our door? My sister had assumed she was imagining it, but apparently Emma had seen him through the peephole. At some point, she had looked, and she had seen him. The hotel never figured out why he was there. The police arrested him for trespassing. My sister and Emma left the hotel that morning. They never stayed there again. But there's one thing that still bothers my sister. She told me that after everything happened, she asked Emma how she knew the man was outside the door. Emma said, I saw his shoes. My sister asked her why she didn't say that immediately. Emma shrugged. Then she said, I thought you already knew. That's the part that stays with me, because children don't always understand danger the way adults do. Sometimes they notice something, and the adults explain it away. And sometimes, by the time you realize they were right, the person you thought was outside may have already been much closer than you thought. Story 3. The room that was already occupied. I was 26 when this happened. At the time, I worked as a freelance photographer. I traveled alone most of the time. Cheap flights, cheap hotels, whatever I could afford. This particular trip took me to a city I'd never visited before. I arrived late, almost 1 a.m. My flight had been delayed. I was exhausted. The hotel was near the airport. It was one of those large hotels with long hallways and hundreds of rooms. The lobby was almost empty. I checked in. The receptionist gave me a key card. Room 614, I took the elevator upstairs. When I reached the 6th floor, I remember feeling relieved. I just wanted to sleep. I walked to room 614. I swiped the card. The light turned green. I pushed the door open and immediately stopped. The room was dark, but I could hear something. A television. Very quietly, I stood there. I looked at the number on the door. I checked my key card. I thought maybe the TV had been left on. That happens. I stepped inside. The room smelled like someone's cologne. There was a suitcase on the luggage rack, a pair of shoes near the bed. I froze. I stepped back into the hallway. I checked the door number again. I immediately called the front desk. Hi, I said, I think there's a problem with my room. The receptionist asked what happened. I told her the room appeared to be occupied. There was a long pause. Then she said, Are you sure you're in 614? I said, yes. She asked me to wait outside. A few minutes later, another employee came upstairs. He looked at my key card, then he looked at the room. He opened the door. The television was still on. The suitcase was still there. The shoes were still there. But there was no person. The employee looked confused. He called the front desk. Apparently, the room was listed as vacant. No guest was supposed to be inside. They moved me to another room. I didn't think much about it afterward. I assumed it was some kind of hotel mistake. Maybe someone had forgotten to update the system. Maybe a previous guest had left their belongings. It was strange, but not necessarily dangerous. At least that's what I told myself. The next morning, I went downstairs. The receptionist apologized. She said the room had been inspected. They had found no one. She told me the previous guest had checked out earlier that day. I asked about the belongings. She said they belonged to the previous guest. Apparently, housekeeping had accidentally failed to remove them. That explanation made sense, so I accepted it. I spent the day working. That evening, I returned to the hotel around 10 p.m. I went to my new room, room 628. I locked the door, I ordered food, I watched television, and then I went to sleep. At around 2:15 a.m., I woke up. I heard something outside my door, a soft scraping sound. I sat up. The sound stopped. I waited. Then I heard a quiet metallic click. My door handle moved. I immediately got out of bed. The deadbolt was locked. The security latch was engaged. I stood there. Then someone whispered, "Housekeeping." I looked at the clock. 2:15 a.m. I didn't answer. The person outside knocked once, then again. "Housekeeping." I called the front desk. I told them someone was trying to enter my room. The receptionist sounded confused. She said no housekeeping staff were working on my floor. I stayed silent. A few seconds later, I heard the person outside move away. The front desk sent security. They checked the hallway. Nobody was there. The next morning, I asked to speak with the manager. I told him everything. He checked the security footage. And that's when things got disturbing. The person outside my door had been wearing a dark jacket. They couldn't identify him. But the cameras showed him walking directly from the elevator to my room. He had not tried any other doors. He had come specifically to mine. The manager told me they were investigating. I decided to leave. I packed my things. Before I checked out, I asked one final question. "Do you know who stayed in room 614 before me?" The manager looked at me. He hesitated. Then he said, "Why?" I told him about the suitcase, the television, the shoes. He said the previous guest had checked out normally, but then he added something. The guest had complained that someone had been entering his room at night. I stared at him. "Did you investigate?" He said they had. They hadn't found anything. I asked him if the guest had left any belongings behind. He said no. Then I remembered something: the suitcase, the shoes, the television. I asked him to describe the previous guest. He couldn't. The records were confidential, but I knew something wasn't right. I asked him to check the hallway footage from the night before. He agreed. We watched it together. The footage showed me arriving at room 614. It showed me opening the door. It showed me stepping inside, then stepping back out, then calling the front desk. But before I arrived, someone else had entered that room. About 20 minutes earlier, a man. He used a key card. He entered room 614, and he stayed inside for almost 20 minutes. Then he left. The manager looked at me. "That doesn't make any sense." I asked him why. He said the key card used to enter the room belonged to me. It had been programmed at the front desk shortly before I arrived, which meant someone had somehow used my key card information, or the hotel system had issued the same access to someone else. Neither explanation was comforting, but there was something even worse. The manager kept watching. The man had left room 614. He walked down the hallway. Then he entered the stairwell. About 10 minutes later, he appeared on the 6th floor again. But this time, he was coming from the opposite direction. He walked directly to room 628. My room. He stood outside, then he tried the handle. The security footage showed him standing there for almost 3 minutes. Then he walked away. The manager immediately called the police. They searched the hotel. They couldn't find him. He had disappeared. I checked out that morning. I never stayed in a hotel alone again for a long time. The police later told me they believed the man had been staying somewhere in the hotel. They couldn't prove it. There was no record of him checking in, no clear footage of him entering the building, nothing. But they did find something. The key card used to enter room 614 had been deactivated after I called the front desk. And somehow, someone had tried using it again at room 628, my room, after I had already left. I don't know who that man was. I don't know if he had been watching me. I don't know how he knew which room I was staying in, but I still think about that first night. Standing in the doorway of room 614, hearing the television, seeing the suitcase, thinking the room was simply occupied by mistake. What if I'd walked farther inside? What if the person who had been hiding there hadn't left yet? What if I hadn't noticed the suitcase? And the question that bothers me the most is this: how long had someone been watching the hotel? And how many other guests had walked into their rooms without realizing they weren't actually alone? Because hotels are strange places. Hundreds of people come and go every day. You don't know who's staying in the room next to you. You don't know who's walking down the hallway. And sometimes, you don't even know who has a key to your door. The next time I stay in a hotel, I do something I never used to do. The moment I enter the room, I check the bathroom, I check behind the curtains, I check the closet, and I always make sure the door is locked. Because I learned something on that trip. When you're in a hotel, the room you're given may be private, but the building itself never really is, and sometimes the person you're afraid of isn't trying to break into your room. They may already have a key, and they may already know exactly where you are.